Hello and welcome to Fresh Perspectives. My name is Gail, and today I have a really special guest on today. His name is Mike Leach, and the reason that I asked him to come on is because he had heart disease 12 years ago and was able to reverse that just by diet and other lifestyle changes. And he's here to tell us all about it. Thank you for coming on, Mike.
You're welcome. It's nice to be here. Thank you for asking me.
Yeah, he has a something very important to tell all of you. Now, there were certain acknowledgements you wanted to make.
Yeah. I need to say at the outset that I'm not a medical professional, okay, and so I took my cues from a number of books, and we have some of them here before us. I kind of brought two approaches together. I used Dean Ornish's program as a model, and I brought calorie restriction in, and then merged those two ideas into one, and got a good result. These people and not me are the sources. Most of these people are doctors. I guess all but, well, three of them anyway. I use these people as a reference. I would just mention those people at the outset. Caldwell Esselstyn, he is a Cleveland Clinic cardiologist, works in prevention at this point. Dean Ornish wrote a book, the Dean Ornish Program for Reversing and Curing Heart Disease, published in the 90s. Respecting Calorie Restriction, Roy Walford. I read his book and merged that into Dean Ornish's program. And then I gravitated from that into Caldwell Esselstyn's program, okay, which is a vegan diet, and I merged that with the CR Way people. CR Way people are probably the spokespeople in the country for calorie restriction and that kind of a lifestyle. Colin Campbell published a study which really drew a lot of information together and kind of led me to understand that diseases and heart disease and other diseases are really can be traced to how we live, our externals, and what we put into our bodies. And so that was an illuminating study that that was seminal in forming the way I approach this problem of heart disease. So that's the acknowledgement, is that I have good sources, and what they had to, what I got out of them worked. And so.
And a lot of people are probably going to think it sounds too good to be true, but it's not. If it's too good to be true, it might really be true. So what exactly did the doctors tell you your diagnosis was? You had something that was 80% blocked?
Correct. Yeah, I had an 80% left anterior descending blockage. It occurred at the top of the left anterior vessel. It's the vessel that feeds the ventricle, which is the main pump and heart pump for the body, and they call that the widowmaker. The odds are not good with it. It's a bad place to get a blockage. So if that goes, it takes the ventricle out, and that's kind of curtain. So 80%, these things progress at the rate of 50% a year. It's all right if you're at 1%, you don't really know it. But when you get to 70 and you add 50, or you take 50% of that, you're at 105. So, and I think it's probably every 18 months or so, whatever, I can't really remember, year, 18 months. So 80% is a critical level. Yeah, so that was the diagnosis.
Yeah, so you were in a pretty rough shape at the time. So why did you decide to change your diet and other lifestyle habits instead of having heart bypass surgery?
Okay, that's a good question. I was blessed with a skin issue, which piqued my curiosity. So I got interested in medical issues that I had, okay, causes and cures, and it led me to start reading in this area in the late 70s, early 80s, really, I guess I'd say. So I came across, I read a lot of alternative stuff, newsletters from doctors and that kind of thing. I came across a book by Julian Whitaker, an alternative doctor, published I think in 1984, on heart disease, and what he did is he laid out in picture form how they could show the regression of a plaque, and he also spelled out some of the downsides for coronary bypass surgery and stent issues, and the downsides are stents statistically tend to plug up in 6 years. So if you don't change the reason why, so I had this behind me, that kind of an understanding. I had read stuff, and just as an avocational interest, really. Early 90s, I came across Ornish's book, How to Prevent and Cure Heart Disease. I read it. I didn't get the problem until 2004, that I was told. But I had a background and an understanding. So when I was presented with you know, a stent or a bypass as alternatives, I knew that there was a controversy here and that I might opt for another avenue, and so that's literally why I chose what I chose. I had some background in this and some limited knowledge just because of my interest.
Yeah. Well, you're lucky that you were open-minded enough to try this. A lot of people wouldn't, you know, and they'd have to go through all of those horrible surgeries and might not make it anyways. What kind of dietary changes did you make?
Okay, I essentially became a low-fat vegan. I had Dean Ornish's book. It's a four-part program, and the diet, the basics of the diet is it's a low-fat vegetarian diet. It's not a vegan diet, actually. I followed that, and I followed it very strictly. I tracked my fat and targeted 10%. It is at that level that you tend to get a reversal in heart disease. I guess animal protein and the fat that comes with it, saturated fat, are the culprits, at least at that time they thought, and they still do, I think. So a low-fat diet was the main dietary adjustment that I made. I had been eating pretty much a standard American diet, I would say.
They call it SAD.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hate to say, but it makes me sad to say.
We say it by the word. There's another newer one that they've come up with lately, diet of affluence, which means DOA, which the initials for are DOA, dead on arrival. So
that's interesting.
So, but we call it the SAD diet by its initials because it is a sad diet, you know. You're not doing yourself any favors when you eat the standard American diet.
Yeah.
So, but anyways, now, how do these dietary changes work to clean out a person's arteries? A lot of people are probably wondering now, how could certain kinds of foods unclog your arteries? Do you know the science behind it?
Yeah. Well, I'm a little shaky.
It's probably hard to describe.
It is.
Isn't
I'm
it?
shaky
Yeah.
on the science, but I understand some of the process. And especially what I did, which was to merge calorie restriction, dietary restriction, with it. So I do, but I'm not a biochemist, and so I kind of can tell you essentially what my understanding is that you have from the toxic conglomeration of foods that are put into your system. You know, your body cannot cope with the overload of saturated fat, tends to build up and line your arteries, leads to bacterial infection. There are bacteria that like to eat fat, and so you get abrasions. Meat puts out, on that kind of thing, put out chemical substances which are abrasive and toxic to the vessels. So you get an inflammatory disease process that begins to build up. The immune system goes in and begins to try to clean it up, and the macrophages gorge on fat, and it turns into kind of a boil or a mess, and the body throws up plaques or walls of defense, and if they're there long enough, it'll calcify over those. So then you have a permanent calcified structure that the body has tried to separate off, wall off, to protect itself. So when you start eating a vegan diet, a couple of things happen. The first, or vegetarian, the first thing is you get rid of what's causing the problem, which is saturated fat, omega-6s and the overload of omega-6s. That's a kind of fat that the body doesn't really deal with. You need a balance of these things, and you have an overload of them in the body. So you get rid of the causal factors when you go to a vegetarian diet. So that helps enormously. Second thing is you introduce a plethora of good food substances like antioxidants, and you don't get the fats being oxidized and put into a harmful state in the veins. So that's essentially what happens, and that respite from, and the overload of fat goes away. The body then has a natural repair and maintenance system, and that's kicked in. And emphasizing low fat, it causes the body to clean itself up, essentially. Okay, so maybe you're fat deprived if you're eating 8% or of calories. So anyway, that's essentially what happens, is you're working with the body to get it to take care of the problem, and then you get rid of the root cause, which is the poor diet. Okay.
I can see why these kind of foods would clog up a person's arteries, because before I was 25 years old and cooked meat and stuff, the messes they made in the pots and pans and things are difficult to clean up, and like if you've ever made anything with mozzarella cheese, and you see how it's like sticks like glue to the sides of a pan, you can see why it would probably clog up arteries. I remember seeing some film footage that was produced by John Robbins once upon a time, where they were showing some heart surgery, and they were pulling things out of people's arteries that looked like pieces of sausage that they were pulling out of people's arteries while they were performing the surgery, So I can see where it probably would. Why would you want something that sticks like glue to the pots and pans, and it's really hard to wash off? Why would you want to put something like that inside your body?
Yeah.
So what kind of exercises do you do to keep healthy? Oh, wait a minute, I skipped a question. Should a large percentage of these plant foods be raw?
Yeah, and again, this may be an area of science, but I'll mention I've gravitated towards increasingly more and more as I've transitioned from a vegetarian to a vegan diet, a more raw-based, raw food diet. Most of my food now, vegetables and fruits, are raw. Okay, so what I understand is that foods come packaged with enzymes, and the enzyme that comes packaged with the food aids in the digestion of the food. Okay, so if you cook your foods, you raise the temperature, and I think again it's 118 or something like that.
Yeah.
You destroy the enzymes,
Right,
and so
right.
you place a burden on the body to digest that food, if that's what you're relying on, whereas the natural state of the food, it comes with an enzyme that will aid in the digestion of the food. So you work, again, what you're putting in your mouth is working with your body's processes. That's one element. The other thing is digestion goes on, and that's an enormously complex chemical process. And enzymes, again, and there's thousands of these, they work with the body, and the body works with them to accomplish this process. And so it's really, that's my understanding why it's best to eat raw. And beyond that, I can't really comment on the science behind it, but that's my opinion, and that's how I've come to eat as I've digested more information. And
Well, you know, people that, part of the population that eats a mostly raw food diet, at least 80% raw, they don't have all of the acid reflux symptoms and like that people eat a mostly cooked food diet. So, I mean, there's just all kinds of reasons, that and the energy that you get from the raw foods.
yeah.
Okay, what kind of exercises do you do to keep your heart healthy?
Okay, that's interesting. That's part. Dean Ornish had a 4-part program. One was diet, the other was meditation, and then exercise, and then social support groups. Okay, I did not do that. Social support groups. I did this on my own.
Well, it might be kind of hard to get a group like that together.
Yeah.
But now you can come to our vegetarian vegan
Right.
society dinners at the
Like-minded
Westfield
people.
Y and sit and eat with people that agree with you.
Exactly. So the exercise, and again, it's evolved, leading up to the heart disease problem. I was into aerobic exercise and heavy weightlifting and that. And so since I found out that's not the best, so what I do is I get my exercise at this point, and I never did any more weightlifting after the heart disease diagnosis. Okay, I just stopped that. I said, well, let's stop what's causing the problem, perhaps, even if I don't know. And I went to aerobic exercise. That was all I did. And from that point on, pretty much all I have done. Okay, so get my exercise from gardening, from walking. I have a recumbent bike. I did a lot of that kind of thing. And what else? I have a Tony Little swing walker. I have a cardio force, which is an exercise like a bike.
Oh,
You
yeah.
pull yourself like
Yeah.
that, and there's resistance there. And I use a rebounder, and I use a rebounder for the lymphatic system.
Oh, yeah.
So that's kind of how I exercise. I strictly went away from the resistance stuff and eating for muscle building, which caused the problem, apparently. And I gravitated towards aerobic. And that's kind
Well,
of
you know, now they're finding out that you don't need the animal protein to build big, strong muscles, because I've met people in the last couple of years, I've actually met people that are bodybuilders, and they have all of those really big muscles, and they're vegan. So it turns out you actually don't even need
right. A lot of
those
bad info out there.
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
captivated or captured by it, a lot of it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's kind of hard to get it through your head sometimes, I guess. Now, what was that fourth thing that you were mentioning? The support group. Okay.
Yeah.
You said you meditate. How does that help with a person's overall health and well-being to meditate?
Okay, good question. What's in the head? Okay, there's my understanding. There's two systems: the sympathetic nervous system, generated from our thoughts and our conscious processes. Okay, and then the autonomic or the parasympathetic system. And one of the components of heart disease, you get this out of Ornish, is an imbalance between these two systems. They need to be in balance. And so you kind of get stuck in a stress, flight, fight mode, in a stress situation, and the mind is grinding on, worry, anxiety, overwork, and all of these kinds of things. Your body is out of balance, and so the autonomic system, which functions behind the scenes, is suppressed, and things aren't working properly, and stress hormones are released, and stress hormones are very deleterious. They probably have an effect on the arteries, you know, and so how it all works, I'm not really sure. But when you meditate, it's about relaxation and restoring that balance. in the body. So meditation's a key part. I did a variety of different types of meditation and continue to do them. Progressive relaxation, that's an Ornish piece. Herbert Benson from Harvard. I've done mindful meditation, also visualization. Visualization was a component of this. This is what I did. I saw a bright light coming in through the top of my head, and I saw it coming down into my heart, and I saw it diffusing through and roto-rooting out. And I also transported myself to peaceful meadows and scenes and in nature, strictly with my mind, and listened to soothing music. And so it's working. What's in the head translates to what's in the body and what's going on in the body. So that's an important component of this whole thing.
Yeah, it's the mind-body connection. Now, I forgot to bring it with me, the copy of the bibliography of the books you read when you were doing research on how to improve your health, and I've read some of them. Let's talk about the ones that you feel you benefited from the most.
Okay, I brought them. This is the one, Ornish and this guy here, Esselstyn.
Oh yeah.
Both of these guys. This is not. The book is the Dean Ornish Program for Reversing Heart Disease. I actually gave away my copy.
Oh,
and so
yeah,
I had
so
to,
you just brought another one of his books in.
Yeah, exactly. But
this looks like it's a weight loss.
Yeah,
one. Yeah.
He's written a lot of good stuff, a really lot of good stuff. So, yeah, he was the main guy I knew about, and I started on his program, and I did the 3 parts of his 4-step program. Vegetarian diet, low fat. It was quite a transformation. You know, it took me, symptoms went away within 1 month, as he says. I was not over the disease. That was confirmed by...
it takes a long time.
3 years?
Yeah.
Yeah, it takes a while.
It took a lifetime to get into that situation. It's going to take more than a few days to get out
yes,
of it.
Exactly so. The other one that is seminal in this, really important, is this is a vegan approach, Caldwell Esselstyn.
And I think he recommends mostly raw foods too, doesn't he?
Correct.
If I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah.
I haven't read this book, but I've seen DVDs of him, and you know, the studies he's done and like that. You know, so. So
I merged this book with this book, which was on dietary restriction, and Roy Walford, Beyond the 120-Year Diet.
Yeah, what does that mean, beyond the 120-year diet? Is that how old we're supposed to be able to live to?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, all things optimal, and if you live optimally, and he did studies on animals, all manner, and found that restricting calories and maximizing nutrient content in food, and getting the balance, getting metabolism right, the balance between carbohydrates, fats, and proteins, getting those things right, resulted in a dramatic extension of, and disease-free extension of life. And so what I did is I took Ornish and I took Esselstyn, and I merged the 2 concepts of the diet together. I did that initially. I did that within the first 3 years. The last 10 months of the first 2 years, before they told me that I had accomplished and reversed the diet or the heart disease, I actually went to this, and I was attempting, using dietary software, to merge these 2 guys, and it didn't work real well. But I got enough truth gathered that it actually reversed the heart disease. So those were the first 2. Then I went to a vegan diet, and that's Esselstyn and these people.
And the China study also.
The China study, yeah, was just tremendous information. What it says is that eating this style, eating a traditional whole food, raw food diet, results in reversal of a lot of different issues or lower incidence. And if you look at the incidence, for example, in these cultures in China that Caldwell Esselstyn study, it's like 1 out of 500,000 people winds up with coronary artery disease in China in these cultures, and it's at age 60 in this culture, it's 1 out of 2 have clinical manifestations. Most of them don't know it. But it's there, and it's been growing since they were 30.
Right.
And so I merged these people, the CR Way people, that's Paul McLaughlin and Meredith Averill, who run the CR Way, and these people are the go-to people in the United States, as far as I know, on this as a lifestyle, calorie restriction. And I merged their concepts, many life-changing concepts, with this, Esselstyn. So my diet then became a vegan diet, and these are my inspirations for how I eat and how I live now. So the diet became a vegan diet, and the nice thing about the vegan diet is it merged with calorie restriction very, very well, whereas I couldn't blend these two very well. So this is really what I do. These two people here, and I owe a lot to this gentleman.
Now, people are probably hearing you speak about calorie restriction, so they're probably thinking he must be hungry most of the time. So why don't you explain to him that you can get how you can get plenty of food to eat and not be hungry, you know, on this particular diet? They're probably thinking, oh, he must be starving or something like that. So.
No, not true. The amazing thing is that it gets rid of the problem of counting calories. Okay, you pick up the longevity, the changes in biochemistry that are associated with a longer lifespan, proven by these people, or this guy, Mr. Walford, and his studies, and other people too. There's a number of people who have researched this and dedicated their life to this kind of research going on all over the world. So not true that it's about deprivation. It really is not. The beauty of this is you get nutrient. There's two ideas in calorie restriction. One is optimal nutrition, nutrient density for the caloric intake, and the other is the relationship between the carbs, the fats, and the proteins, and getting metabolism, the metabolic or the energy burn in the body correct, so that you don't get toxic residues like too many fats, too much protein. You get a clean burn, and carbs do that. So you are in no sense deprived. What you do is you just switch your food sources from processed and from things like things that have a high caloric input in them, like meats do, and milk products, and you switch them to vegetables. And you eat unlimited vegetables, and you get away from sugar, you get away from fat, and so you make these alterations, and you need to be calorie restricted. You need to get the metabolic problem right. You need to give yourself the correct percentage of carbs, fats, and proteins. Per heart disease, you need 10%. That's what these guys say, of fat and 10% of protein. Overload of protein, the body needs it, but overload causes disease of one in the body. So you work on that problem, and this is how I eat. 1 to 2 cups of cereal grain with fruit on it, okay, to make it taste good. 1 cup of beans, this is breakfast, at say 8 o'clock, or 7 or 6, whenever I get up. 1 cup of beans, okay, with something on that to make it taste good. You might put onions and garlic mixed with mustard or whatever suits your taste. There's a lot of ways you can doctor food to make it taste good. So we don't suffer for just eating raw vegetables with no taste. A small handful of nuts or seeds, very small, okay, for the fat. Mixed between, and I ate 2 meals. This is a CR Way innovation, 2 meals, because it's been found that the time away from food fasting is as important as the pattern and what you eat, okay? Gives the body, the reason is this: if you constantly eat throughout the day, then the body is constantly digesting, and that's where the body's energy goes, okay?
Right.
And 80% of its time can be dedicated towards that problem, and 20% towards repair and maintenance. And that's why it can't clean up the heart disease. It hasn't got enough. You keep dumping the same stuff on it again.
Oh, yeah.
So you get the metabolic problem right: 80, 10, 10, carbs, fats, proteins. And you get the calories right, and that's bowl. And then you add in the nutrient density. And the nutrient density comes from plants. Heavy emphasis on the greens, leafy greens, kale, collards, and that kind of stuff. But all manner of vegetables. You spare none, and you eat them. I eat them the best way, I do believe.
Well, you can eat as much as you want, and you won't gain weight.
Absolutely. You will lose weight, and you will be stable. And that's the amazing thing, is that merging these two people, no calorie counts. Absolute stability in weight. You don't go anyplace. And I had a weight problem my whole life. And all of a sudden, after the adjustment, you know, you eat until you're so full and you waddle away from the table, you can't eat anymore.
Right.
I eat twice a day. So, with a long fast. So that is the essential of how I eat and how I merged these two concepts together. Calorie restriction, the key was the Esselstyn diet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, you said you actually had the opportunity to speak to Caldwell Esselstyn on the phone. What did you ask him, and what did he tell you?
Okay, well, he runs a prevention program, and so, you know, I am trying to cure myself. Do I need to go and see him? So he said, he listened to me. I called, left a message, he called back. He listened to me and he said, no, do what you're doing, and you don't need to see us. And then he talked, he's published 2 studies, one about 6, 7, or 8, and then he published a sequel, where he took a group of very sick people, heart disease, and they cleared their arteries. They went in and did an invasive procedure and found that their arteries had actually cleaned up. Okay, these people were very bad off. So what he said to me, as a result of these are published in the Journal of American Medical Association, published these studies, and they're rather conclusive studies that show that you can reverse heart disease. And what he said to me was this: approved, 100% caused by diet, heart disease, and 100% cured by diet as a result of these double-blind studies. So that's a great comment that he made.
Yeah, some of the people from this DVD that I saw about him, they were with the same diet that we're, you know, with a vegan, mostly raw foods diet that we're talking about. There were other people that participated in his study that were diabetic or had cancer also. And with that same diet, they reversed those diseases too.
Okay, that's interesting. I didn't see that, so that's interesting.
Yeah. It was a DVD. It belonged to the one that I saw belongs to somebody else, but it was really interesting to watch.
This guy here, I understand from writing this, he did studies with rats, and he found that if you introduce animal protein into a diet, you could turn on cancer, cause it to grow, and if you withdrew it, you could turn it off. And he did this repeatedly with these animals. That's my understanding.
Yes, you can starve cancer cells to death with the right diet. So I just think this subject is so interesting. It's my understanding that a whole foods plant-based diet helps reverse all the serious diseases, including cancer and diabetes. So what should we, now I want to bring this up, what should we say to people who believe that drinking certain alcoholic beverages is good for their heart? What have you found out?
Okay, well, I have a comment on that, because as a layman, acquiring information, figuring out the difference between good marketing and good advertising and good science is maybe the fundamental problem you have. And so what I did, I read a lot of stuff. It seemed to me the evidence was mixed. I had heart disease, so I started drinking a couple glasses of wine. The evidence is mixed. I haven't studied it recently, but I have in the last while come across a rather large study, and if it's good for the heart, and it may be, I don't know, but it's not good for the aging mind, and that seems pretty conclusive. And so I think that the best advice that can be given is better to leave it alone. This is the stuff that'll help in the long run. The problem that I found with alcohol was this: it's insidious. You know, you do a drink and then you want two, and after 2 years or so, it undermines the will. And this takes a little discipline, and if you're inclined to, you know, then you overeat, or you go and eat a snack and stuff like that. So that's the problem that I really found with the alcohol, and so I quit it on my own, except when I go out, and now I'm at the point where I'm just going to not do it at all, because I think the science is coming in on it.
Yeah, I only drank alcoholic beverages myself for only a few years after I was first old enough, but I usually didn't feel good after drinking it. Sometimes I'd actually throw up. Other times, which might have been an allergic reaction to it, and sometimes I'd feel what was going on around me didn't seem real, like I was in a dream or something, and at other times it would actually even cause me to have anxiety attacks. So I decided, and I never really cared that much for the way it tasted either, you know, it somehow seemed awfully strong or something. So I just, before I was out of my early 20s, maybe 24 or something like that, I had quit drinking alcoholic beverages because I just didn't want it anymore. And then when I was 25 and started practicing yoga, I found that the yoga teachers discouraged people from drinking alcoholic beverages too, as well as meat and like that, you know. So, so I feel a lot better. People think that I'm missing out on a good time. Sometimes people try to talk me into having a drink, but it feels, to me, it feels better to be healthy than to get high on some alcoholic beverages or something. So, so tell me, are you free of heart disease now?
Okay, well, actually since 2007, I had a local doctor, and they did stress imaging. They put you on a treadmill and then take pictures of your heart and how it's working and everything. And so I think I had that done 3 times. Then I had an angiogram done too, which actually they go into the vein. Okay,
Yeah.
so that was done, and that's where they said you have an 80% blockage. But the heart got better over the course of this 3-year period, and I guess it approached a point of the heart was normal, and the doctor said to me, congratulations, subject to the limitations of the technology, you no longer have heart disease. And I had 0 symptoms, and I've had them 0 symptoms since. So.
Well, you said one doctor, when he looked at your records from before you started this, said you should be dead.
Well, this was, yeah, this guy's a Dr. Pulowitz down in Westchester County, and I've seen him. Didn't have a heart doctor for 10 years, and I got in a study, and he was in the study, so I went to him, and I'm glad to do so. He's a good doctor, non-invasive, Harvard-trained guy, and he made that comment to me after I did a stress test, and he looked at the function. He says, your heart is functioning in the 95th percentile of all people your age. You know, it's. And he looked at me and said, you should be dead. And then he said, probably the only reason you're not is because of the way you eat, the diet.
Yeah. What are your cholesterol and blood pressure readings like these days?
Okay. Well, blood pressure and heart disease are kind of cousins. They're related.
Right.
Blood pressure was always up, 140/90 when the issue came up in '04. Always been high, and my doctor says stiff pipes. So a normal would be 130/80. On and off medicines over periods. That's now unmedicated. Recently, within the last while, since I've become a vegan, the blood pressure has begun to drop, and now I would say a normal is 115, 120/70. 70 is pretty much it. If I have, if I'm under stress,
It'll
or
go up a little.
white coat, it goes up 130/80. Otherwise, it's 120/70.
Yeah, it's funny about being nervous, isn't it? How it affects your blood pressure, and that's why you meditate, right?
Right.
Now, a lot of people believe that bad eyesight is a normal part of the aging process, but apparently it really has a lot to do with diet. When people start to eat a really good diet, they're, a plant-based diet, mostly raw foods, their eyesight improves. I read all about that in a book called The Hallelujah Diet by George Malkmus, who kind of got his start he started out as a minister, but then he somehow learned things about eating right and everything, and one of the improvements he and his wife noticed in their health was that their eyesight improved, and they're way up in their 70s now, and they don't need glasses. So I was wondering, have you noticed anything like that?
Okay, I have to. Here's what I got. The problems that I got kind of were in a succession from '99, 2002, 2004. It culminated in heart disease. In '02, it was glaucoma, which can be driven by a vascular problem, ischemia, plugged microcapillaries, and that kind of a thing. So that's a piece of baggage that I'm carrying forward. And my understanding is on the glaucoma issue that that has not reversed, okay, and that maybe it's gotten somewhat worse over the last 13 years. 13 years this October. So as far as other aspects of my sight, I had a bad astigmatism, and I was recently told that it was gone in the right eye and almost in the left, and I think my vision in the left eye is approaching 20/20 uncorrected.
Oh.
So this is maybe a work in progress. I'm eating a better diet than I was back here and over the course. The vegan diet now. I have a friend that the drusen, which is in the macula, told he had macular degeneration. He eats this way, and the drusen regressed. Doctor says that doesn't happen. It did. And the macula have improved. So I'm hopeful in that, but I'm still fighting with the glaucoma, okay?
Okay, so it has improved in some ways, and the glaucoma just didn't change at all.
Correct.
Okay.
But it
hasn't gotten any worse?
It might have even gotten worse.
Oh, really?
Possibly. So I'm a little bit confused about some of the stuff I'm told, but so that's it.
Yeah. What do you say to people who think that it would be too hard to change from the standard American diet to this? People think that they would have to take classes and all kinds of things. I always tell people, if you know how to use a recipe book, you can do it, you know. Because people know how to use recipe books, most of them, a lot of them, anybody who cooks. So, but anyway, they choose to argue that it would be too hard. But a lot of people, I think a lot of people get you know, sentimentally attached to the foods they grew up on and like that, and they don't want to quit eating those things.
Yeah,
like,
it's like habit, is what it is.
right.
Essentially, you know, it requires discipline, then it becomes habit, and your tastes change. So it's not and it's easier. There's less food preparation. There's essentially, you know, make your grains, make your beans, freeze them, and then thaw them and eat them in these, and eat, you know, fruits and vegetables and raw. It's a simpler thing, and then it's a habit, and your taste changes. And no, you don't miss any of that stuff. In fact, it tastes funny to you.
After a while,
it
yeah.
does. Yeah.
I told that to somebody that, one time, somebody that I know, when she was sitting down to eat one of those sweet roll types of things, you know, pastry type of thing, real, you know, real sugary white flour kind of stuff, and I remember telling her that once I'd gotten away from eating that kind of thing, it didn't taste good to me anymore.
That's right.
She did say she'd heard that, but wasn't going to make herself give up having one of those now and then, you know. I remember an herbalist telling me one time that it takes 10 days on a cleansing diet to undo the damage done by one donut.
Really?
Yeah, yeah. So anyways, that's one good reason not to eat donuts, I guess. I quit eating them after I'd become vegetarian in my 20s. When I found out that I read somewhere that they fried them in lard or something like that, and I thought, well, okay, that's not vegetarian. You know, people don't even know, you know, I mean, some foods have animal products hidden in them, you know, that you're not really aware of, like, for instance, Jell-O. Gelatin comes from an animal's body. So, marshmallows. I used to love s'mores, you know, that treat with the graham crackers when you're out camping, and you roast a marshmallow over the open fire, and you take the graham crackers and some Hershey bar and put the roasted hot marshmallow in between it, and it melts. And I used to like that until I found out that marshmallows were made with gelatin, which comes from an animal. So now I don't eat s'mores anymore.
Well, it is an education, and you get it when you start reading the labels and the stuff that is slipped in to the
if you're not
food.
reading labels in the grocery store, you don't really know what you're buying.
Yeah.
And even then, a lot of them are given different names from what they actually are. One lady who I know that's allergic to corn says they put corn in almost every processed food.
Yeah.
You know, and they call it by a long, long, long list of different names. I think you were there at the dinner when she was speaking for us. You know, she's the one with the mast cell activation syndrome. So she's had to research, in order to be well and healthy, she has had to research all of this. And I have to say I admire her for putting the amount of time into it that she has. But she has to be careful. She can't go out to eat at a restaurant or anything, which is another thing. When you go out to eat at a restaurant, they're probably not naming all of the ingredients in the foods there.
That's true.
Yeah, so...
I have an interesting experience when I go out to eat. And why this happens, I don't know. But I eat such a clean, pure diet. I go out to eat, and the first day, let's say I go down to Westchester County or something to visit my doctors, the first day I will gain 3 pounds.
Oh, on one day?
One day.
Yeah.
And then the second day I will gain 3 pounds. And I'm saying it's not possible. I'm not putting that much food in my body. I don't know how this happens, but whatever is done to the food, the ingredients and everything, it's so different than the way I eat that it actually produces this effect. I guess it's just water retention. The
Yeah.
cardiologist said salt. Well, maybe. But
Yeah, it will cause water retention. They do put a lot more salt
yeah.
in the restaurant foods.
Uh-huh.
So, are you glad this is the choice you made for yourself?
Well, yes. Number one, I got rid of heart disease. Number two, I got onto a healthy track that, if you believe the science, is going to keep me healthy and is going to extend my life. And I merged those two things together, and I have to say I have been healthy.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't had almost no issues
Mm-hmm.
at all, except what I brought into the
What came
what I
into
had
the
before.
process?
So yeah, I am.
You came down with some other health problems before
Right.
that, right?
And it came from a study, really, in a discipline, to really just a simple habit and a different way of living. And so yeah, I mean, I'm nothing but the gainer for this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of people think, because I eat a vegan diet, a lot of people think that I'm not having as much fun as they are, you know, like we were talking about the alcoholic beverages. I won't take a drink. You know, there are just a lot of things that I won't eat. And people think I'm missing out on a good time, but what better time can you, how much more fun can you have but feeling healthy?
That's right. Yeah.
And you said that you have a relative that you helped.
Well,
Was it a relative or a friend?
a friend.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. In fact, there's been two people. I can mention both of these people.
Mm-hmm.
I cleared this with both of them. One guy is a friend in Baltimore.
Mm-hmm.
His name is Jeff Israel, and he is a real good friend. We have common interests, and one of them is health. And he had stage 4 metastatic prostate cancer.
Mm-hmm.
Prostate removed in 98, I think.
Mm-hmm.
It progressed, and
So
stage-
having the
Yeah.
prostate gland removed, the
Right.
cancer was still there.
the PSA started to go up. That's a marker,
Mm-hmm.
and hot spots with scans in his ribs. PSA had doubled. When I first met him 3 years ago, it was down less than 1. I don't know whether it was 0.2 or whatever, but it was very low.
Mm-hmm.
And then it started to creep up and went to 4.
Mm-hmm.
And the doctor, they did a scan, told him you have metastatic prostate cancer.
Mm-hmm.
So he and I have a relationship based on the China study, based on a vegan diet, and he converted to a vegan diet, and his PSA in the last, I don't know whether it's 18 months or a year, anyway, it's gone from 4 down to 0.47. That's a reversal of about 80% in the marker for the progression of prostate cancer. The disease is going backwards. That's the interpretation. The doctor says you don't need a scan, you're in at least a holding pattern. So that's one story. The guy's name is Jeff Israel, good friend. Another guy came to put a counter in my house, and this guy is late 50s. He had a quadruple bypass. He calls them bypasses, might have been stents, I'm not sure. At 52, and he's having symptoms. Well, so we start talking, and I start talking about all of this stuff. I met with him a number of times, and he's on a vegan diet. That was a year ago in April. He had a heart attack, damaged the ventricle in his heart. I guess it was the ventricle, some part of his heart, so it wasn't beating in, in correct order. And he kept up with the exercise. He went on this guy's diet, Esselstyn's, yeah. And 1 year later, they gave him a function test, I think it was, an echo, and the doctor says your heart is okay. His cholesterol numbers and blood work is phenomenal on this, and I talked to him a couple months ago. He called me. He told me about this, you know, because they had told him this is permanent and it will not reverse. This heart damage that you suffered from this heart attack he had in April of 16, about. It did reverse, and the heart is functioning, and he's now coaching track, not coaching, but he's a referee in high school track. His name is Al Haywood. He came to a vegan meeting, a couple, and that's what he's doing. And so, you know, I think the stuff works. It's just a matter of doing it. Unfortunately, they don't broadcast. You know, they can do their procedures, but if you don't make the change in your lifestyle, you're likely to get a revisit.
Oh yeah, that's the thing that I was going to mention, was that you can never go back to the old way of doing things.
That's
because the problems come back. So you really do have to. It has to be a lifetime commitment.
Get rid of the cause, and you get the cure.
Right. Right, so it's not a permanent fix, but neither are those surgeries that a lot of people are getting. So I would rather do the diet than I would rather do the diet than go through the horrible, nasty surgeries. You know.
Yeah.
Because then the surgery is like a major what do they call it?
It can contribute to,
yeah, it doesn't help you.
No.
Really. It's a major injury to your body.
Exactly.
That's what I was trying to say.
40% cognitive impairment with permanent people who have this, people over 60. Even this angiogram that I had to confirm the diagnosis, 1 out of 1,000 people will die from that procedure. 1 out of 200 will experience a stroke or heart attack as a result of that, have some kind of a significant event. So these are not risk-free things that people are involving themselves in. There's risk in this too, because it takes the body a time to adjust. But you have the problem, so which way you're going to go? So you know, the facts should be out there for people. There are choices here.
Well, we've come to the end of another episode of Fresh Perspectives. Thank you for being on. I hope we've helped some people by doing this program today. And thank you again for being on. I'll see the rest of you in a couple of weeks.
Thank you, Gail.
You're welcome.